Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Spring 2021 Safety Standdown. My name is Terry Kelly, and I'm on the faculty in the Department of Aviation Science, and I also serve as the safety advisor for our flight operations. I've been asked to bring you this introduction and to speak to you about the notion of reporting. So I will share this screen with you. Again, welcome to the Safety Standdown, sponsored by the Safety Committee. So reporting systems, you might ask yourself, why bother? What is a reporting system? Well, a reporting system is simply the committee asking you to report hazards that you might identify in our system. That term hazard can mean a number of different things, and I hope to make that a bit more clear as we go through this short presentation. Why bother? Because we want to disseminate important information. We want to be a learning organization. We want to learn about the hazards in our system and, as necessary, mitigate those hazards in an effort to make our system safer. We want to identify the antecedents to incidents and accidents. And antecedent just simply means the precursors to those incidents and accidents. Again, the idea being that if we know about the contributing factors to an incident or an accident, we may be able to stop that incident or accident from ever occurring. Why bother? Well, to serve as a resource for safety data analysis. What I mean by this, quite simply, is we can use techniques to examine the reports that are provided and potentially identify patterns that exist prior to an accident. Again, it's all aimed at improving safety. Maybe leverage to improve safety in similar high consequence environments. We ask you to report any type of hazard, not just hazards that might occur while you're out flying or perhaps at the airport, but any hazards that occur within our system here at Parks College so that we can, again, just make the entirety of our organization safer. Now, here at Parks, we use the PEDALS program, the Parks Event Debrief and Learning System. PEDALS is an acronym. Some of you may be familiar with a formal program, the Aviation Safety Reporting System, which is an FAA program that is administered by NASA. So the FAA pays for it, but NASA administrates it. And this is a program I would encourage you to use if you ever encounter a problem while operating an airplane. The ASRS system takes information and kind of evaluates it, analyzes that data, and provides reports. And from those reports, the FAA may take actions. They may change rules. They may update rules. It's a formalized process to help the FAA learn about how the system is being used. The ASRS system was adopted in 1975, and it is a system that's open to pilots, air traffic controllers, mechanics, dispatchers, really any certificated individual. That said, you don't necessarily have to have a certificate to file a so-called NASA report. The beauty of the NASA system is that it's going to provide you some protections from FAA actions should you make a mistake. So we can identify hazards, and that would be inclusive of operational errors you might make while operating an airplane. The FAA determined that the ASRS ASRP reporting program effectiveness would be greatly enhanced if NASA, rather than the FAA, accomplished the receipt, processing, and analysis of the raw data. Okay, why? Well, it can be challenging to get people to report if they think that report could lead to penalties. Why would I tell the FAA I did something wrong if it's the FAA who is charged with enforcement actions? Consequently, NASA sort of serves as a go-between. They take the reports, they de-identify those reports, they analyze those reports, and as I said, they provide information to NASA, completely de-identified, and therefore NASA can't come back after the certificate holder. The reality is that if you use the ASRS system, you have the potential for certain immunity if the FAA were to find out about, some violation that has occurred, okay? The interest here isn't in punishment. Rather, the interest is to better learn how mistakes are made, what sorts of hazards exist within our system. So ASRS reports are considered non-punitive. Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations and Part 91 suggests that reports submitted to NASA under ASRS or information derived therefrom aren't allowed to be used in any disciplinary action, with a few small exceptions that are kind of attached to criminal offenses or accidents themselves. The ASRS system identifies systems deficiencies, issues alert messages to persons in a position to correct them. It's a learning system by which the FAA can change the rules or at least address hazards that exist in their system. A number of outputs exist from NASA for communicating with the FAA and with the general public. They have a newsletter that is titled Callback. They have the journal, the ASRS Direct Line Journal, in which articles are presented, and they actually publish various research studies. They fund research into aviation safety. One of the most influential outputs of the ASRS system is a database. Anyone can log into the ASRS system and view reports that have been filed. It's especially handy for researchers to look at large numbers of reports where they can perhaps do a statistical analysis or some other type of qualitative analysis. The FAA considers the filing of an ASRS indicative of a constructive attitude. And that, of course, is what provides this notion of it being non-punitive. Accordingly, although a finding of a violation might be made, neither a civil penalty nor certificate suspension will be imposed, okay? Again, with a few caveats. Those being, the violation was inadvertent and not deliberate. You can't just go out knowingly and violate the rules and then achieve immunity through an ASRS. Some other caveats. The alleged violation must be inadvertent, not deliberate, just said that. It must not reveal an event subject to Section 609 of the Federal Aviation Act. Some of you may have heard a 609 ride. This is when the FAA is questioning whether you possess the skill set to exercise the privileges of your certificate. So if a report suggests that you're unqualified, the FAA can still require you to perform a 609 ride. And frankly, they should. If you're a danger to yourself or to others, verifying that you have the appropriate skill set is probably a good idea. The reporter must not have been found guilty of a violation of the regulations over the past 5 years. And the report must be submitted within 10 days of the event. So if you bust in airspace, for example, you have to file that ASRS report within 10 days. And then kind of quickly here, again, can't be a criminal offense, can't be an accident that occurred, and that 609 caveat, it can't indicate a lack of qualification or competency. Now, the beauty of ASRS is that it provides this notion of immunity from FAA actions. But you might ask yourself, well, if I report something, can I get in trouble at SLU? And that's why we would encourage you to really, if you make a mistake, file both an ASRS report and a PETALS report. Again, PETALS is our in-house hazard reporting system. And you know, what it is going to do is it's going to provide you institutional protections. You will not be subject to disciplinary action within SLU if you are eligible for an ASRS, you know, immunity. You will get equal immunities here at SLU if you also file a PETALS report. Again, filing both ASRS and PETALS provides us with the ability to, you know, provide hazard mitigation at the local level. In other words, we learn more about safety at SLU if you file PETALS reports. And again, this notion of protection at both the regulatory level, ASRS, and at the institutional level, the PETALS program. Both systems are relatively easy to utilize. The ASRS reports, you can see, you know, I'm not someone who memorizes links, although there it is. Otherwise, just simply perform a search, a Google search for ASRS NASA reporting. PETALS reports can be, you know, filled out by linking to the AVSI SLU website. And Ryan has placed a link on that page, so you can go there at any point and file a PETALS report. In the end, in your future careers, if you're working in commercial aviation, you will become more familiar with reporting systems in safety management systems. We talk about ASAP programs, for example. It is your way to contribute to safety throughout the organization. So if you see a hazard, report it, right? If it involves something, you know, outside of SLU, make sure you file the ASRS report. If it has anything to do with our SLU operations, please also file a PETALS report so that we can act on these things locally. Thank you for taking the time to attend our virtual safety stand down. And should you have any questions, please reach out to a member of the safety committee. We're happy to help you in any way, and we wish you a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Hello guys, and welcome to the 2021 Safety Stand Down. I'm instructor here at Parks, Robert McGrath. I know you guys probably never seen my full face. Here it is, whatever. And I'm going to talk about a little bit of professionalism and how we as not only instructors, but even students can be professional even in this time of training of right now. In this current juncture in our lives, and how that looks like and what that looks like. Professionalism. What is it? What do you guys think it is? You know, take this quick little moment to think about what professionalism looks like, what it is that you think that professionalism is. But according to Oxford, the dictionary company and all of them, from Google, professionalism is the competence or skill expected of a professional. That doesn't really give us much, right? It's using kind of the word in the definition, but competence and skill, that's a big one. Or also even the practicing of an activity by a professional rather than by amateur players, okay? So let's highlight, you know, competence or skill. that's actually pretty big. The FAA also gives us a little bit of guidance for instructors from the FAA Instructors Handbook. Say how to be professional. Aviation instructors strive to maintain the highest level of knowledge, training, and currency in the field by committing themselves to continuous, lifelong learning and professional development through study and service. Uh, Again, that highest level of knowledge, training, and currency, another key attribute, I guess, about being a professional and practicing professionalism. Even the FAA here says that, sure, even committing ourselves to continuous and lifelong learning. So even though most of the instructors here at Parks or anywhere else where you may go, be it any other 141 school, 61 school, or even later on in your career at an airline, right? They are all still instructors, but we should still be striving to maintain a continuous lifelong learning as instructors so that we can share that learning, share that knowledge and training with you, our students. And how even instructors maintain this level of knowledge, currency, and training with any school, let's say flight school, sorry, be it Part 141 or 61, they usually afford their instructors a monthly proficiency time, usually about an hour, with the aircraft, so that they can remain proficient, right? Landing currencies and instrument currencies, but also even just flying the airplane, right? Still understanding how the airplane flies, and how we can be anticipatory of that, and how we can then relay that information, relay and help our students, right, to gain awareness of those attributes of the aircraft, so that they can too fly the airplane proficiently, right, and precisely. But even also, we said currency, but also knowledge. Aviation instructors, any instructor really, but aviation instructors should be, we should maintain the highest level of knowledge, as it clearly says here. That knowledge coming through, up to date and current charts or information via, just current charts, right? Because even sectional charts, TAC charts, even IFR charts, right? They update every so often. We want to make sure that we keep the most up-to-date version, right? Or even the rigs, right? The FAR aim, have a valid, up-to-date regulation, so that we can have the best knowledge and convey the best, excuse me, convey the best possible and again up-to-date information to you all, our students, because things change all the time, or at least all the time, meaning at least yearly, right? So we want to make sure that we're compliant with everything, and also keeping our skills and knowledge again up to snuff. But also even training, sure, aerodynamics and stuff don't change, right? Science is science. Physics are physics. But even training, right? What we mean by that, or what I mean by that, is that keeping current training techniques, maybe. So being in contact with other instructors, right? Seeing how they're doing things, seeing what works, seeing maybe what doesn't work. But also even DPEs, right? Pilot examiners. Bill, our chief instructor here, is a DPE. Sure, we can't use him for any check rides because he's an employee of the university, but he still is a DPE. He has a wealth of knowledge, and we can definitely rely on him or use him as a resource to see, how instruction really should be given, so that we can mold our pilots right into the competent, skilled pilots, that is to have the competence and skill that is not respected, required of them for that particular level of certificate. okay, or of training, okay, or even other DPs, right? Lindsey Saunders, Colin Foppy, or Robert Frankovich, any other DP, right? We can always talk to them just to see, what's expected, right? But also even the ACS, right? Because DPs are giving check rides in accordance with the ACS, or it should be at least. And so keeping it up to date again, version of the ACS. So sure, even though the paper ACS books that you may have for private instrument or commercial certificates or ratings, right, that was issued I think like 2012 or something like that, or 2015, whatever. But we can even check the FAA website again for the most up-to-date version of anything, because again, that paper isn't just going to automatically update. The FAA, when they come out with something new, sure, it's going to be on their website, so check that, right, for the latest standards of pilot proficiency. This is just taken from the FAA instructor's handbook. Some instructor dues, right? What we should be doing as instructors so that we can be as professional as possible. The first line clearly says, "Be professional at all times." That doesn't do much justice, but sure, be professional at all times. But in part of being professional, there's this sincerity concept of sincerity. We will definitely address that in just a little bit. We'll also present professional appearance and personal habits, maintain a calm demeanor, define common terms, continue professional development. Again, all these terms are professional. How to be professional it doesn't help quite much using the word in the definition, but minimizing student frustration, motivating the student, keep the student informed. That's also a big one, right? We shouldn't be, as instructors, right? We shouldn't just be in the airplane with a student just because we're trying to get hours and go to the next level of our life, right? The next part of our training or career, right? We are instructors for a reason. We chose this job, if not career, right, for a reason. So we should take pride in that, right? And to really take pride in that, we should be, helping our students get to where they want to go, right? We should not have this weird mentality of just, well, I don't know, I flew with them, I did the lesson, they didn't do, they didn't perform, right? Well, maybe, sure, yes, the student should have probably done a little something else maybe to prepare, but still, it's on us as instructors to guide the students, to guide our students, right, to perform to the certain level that we desire and require them to be at, and so on and so forth with the rest of the items on the list here, and even admitting to errors. So there are different tones or like stances of that a professional can take, I guess. I just thought of two. Kind of the traditional tone that you might think of an instructor right there. I kind of use myself as this example. So I'm starting with the right side. So a little more traditional stance, right? Kind of like a real teacher or something like that, right? They're a little more stern, maybe a little less, I don't want to say lenient, but just a little more stern, a little more parental, all right? If you kind of think of that in that regards. But even me as an instructor, I tell and teach my students, right, certain concepts and skills, and then I'm teaching so that they can then show me later, like, okay, do this thing that I showed you how to do, right? I showed you, so now show me. And sure, maybe the more traditional tone, some instructors may choose, right? They're a little less prone to hanging out with students or following them on social media or all that jazz. But maybe a little more contemporary stance could be, I just used Luke Perellis out at the airport as an example. I also asked his permission to use his kind of stance for this, I don't know, highlighting of the two differing stances. But with some, maybe I call them a little more contemporary, I guess, right? Just have a little hint of levity, right? It's not, I don't want to say it's not as serious because we are still taking it very seriously, but just not as stern, right? He's a little more maybe brotherly rather than parental, right? So he kind of he expressed to me that Luke takes a position that he's with the student in the airplane, right, and they're working as a team to gain knowledge, gain skill, and just to operate the aircraft safely, right? Um, and he also said, right, he's just simply a partner, right? He's right there with you. He's gonna, I don't want to say hold your hand, but he's right there with you, in the thick of it, rather than maybe someone who's just kind of letting the student, figure it out. I don't want to say that, but just kind of, I guess, figure it out on their own, right? Luke or someone more contemporary, right? They're there with you to, guide you, help guide you through, and make it through a particular situation or whatever the case may be. And maybe someone, more contemporary, they may be more likely to hang out with students in free time or joke around with them, with memes and stuff on social media, whatever, and follow them on social media and all that jazz. But I'm only highlighting these two stances or these two types of stances, right? Not to say that one is better than the other, but just to simply show you, the students, that there are differences in instruction, sure, differences in personality, your instructor's personality, difference in your own personality. And so you can, be on the lookout for either type or any other type, I guess, of instruction, and, go to what works for you, right? If you're more of a traditional student and you want to, really delineate that, those boundaries of, okay, you're my instructor, I'm your student, I don't really want to hang out with you and all this stuff, just teach me what I need to learn and what I need to know for this stage of training. Sure, maybe try to get a more traditional instructor or something, or if you think that you as a student may benefit more from being a little more friendly with your instructor, all this stuff, probably get someone who's a little more contemporary, like Luke Perez or something, right? I'm not trying to say one is better than the other, just simply highlighting that these are out there. What that brings me to next is, again, this notion of sincerity. So no matter the type of approach, the goal is still the same for each type of instructor. The goal is to mold good, competent pilots, right? To build knowledge, to gain understanding, and to hone those skills. Okay. We want our pilots to succeed, not only to pass, a check ride on a particular day, only doing exactly what you need to do just to get that certificate, but you should be doing exactly what you need to do every day to operate that aircraft safely. I tell my students that I don't teach them to pass a check ride, okay? I'm teaching them to, again, operate safely. So pretty much when a check ride comes, they are already prepared for it, right? And they're doing exactly what they've been doing. There's nothing different from check ride day and any other day, right? They're doing the exact same thing, all the exact same preparation that they need, so that they can be as knowledgeable about maybe that flight or flight plan of that particular day, and where they're going, and even airworthiness and all this stuff, every day, not just, a check ride day. And so this level of sincerity, or this notion of sincerity, is, I think, very, very important. Again, like I talked about earlier, like some instructors, hopefully none here at Parks, have this mindset that, hey, I'm just trying to build hours. This is my best way of getting hours fast. So we're going to fly together. If you don't do well, whatever. Even if you don't do well, sure, I'll just take over and I'll handle everything. But, your student isn't learning anything, right? Or learning much, right? They're not engaged, they're not actively engaged in it. And if they think that they're also going to have someone there to hold their hand or to do everything for them if they can't, right? You're doing them a disservice. You're doing the industry a disservice of, just not building that knowledge, not building that understanding, because then they're going to get maybe to a later stage of training and those building blocks just aren't there. So they can't add anything else, right? Any new rating, any new certificate, because their building blocks just aren't there. There's no foundation. So I think this notion of sincerity is very key, or even right in a more somber mood, right? What if that student with the insincere instructor, right? What if they just said, well, I clearly am not, performing as I should be, and I just can't get this new certificate, or I can't even get this new rating, or whatever the case may be, and they just give up, right? And I don't think that's any fair to them, right? That's not fair, right? They just pretty much wasted money, right, for training that they can't even show any proof for, because they have no certificate, they have no rating, no nothing, right? So no matter the approach, right, it's on us as instructors to be sincere, to make sure that our students are actually growing as pilots, and growing in this field of aviation, so that we're helping pretty much, right, our posterior get better, right, to keep this aviation industry strong and growing, so that they can then even be instructors maybe, or even just tell other people about aviation and be good examples of members of the aviation industry, right, rather than this perpetual just kind of deterioration of pilot skill and knowledge and overall public satisfaction, or whatever that word may be. I'm sorry, I can't think of it right now. So so talk about how we as instructors can be professional, but also you, the students, can also be professional in a sense, right? If the instructor cares about you and your growth, they will and they should make sure that you succeed. But students, however, need also to make sure that you, again, come to each lesson prepared. Okay, don't just show up with if you're going to do a ground lesson, don't show up without pen and paper, or even iPad or phone or something, right? Take notes or something, right? Come prepared. Or even if you're going to fly a particular day, bring your headset. Make sure you brought your foggers or something. If you're an insurance student, right? Make sure you have all these things with you, right? Or even coming prepared also means mentally, like being receptive of the day, being receptive of any instruction or critique, and not just blocking out anything that makes you kind of get a negative feeling, but just being prepared for what can happen. But number two, asking questions for clarification. I always tell my students, even students who aren't my given students, if I have like a mock oral or something, or just flow with them or something one day, I'll never, delegate someone else's time. So I won't ever say, always, you can ask your instructor. I'll always tell them, like, hey, you can ask me any questions that you may have about the lesson for the day, or for the next day, or any other questions, right? Because I have come through your shoes, right? I've been in your shoes. So ask questions if maybe something isn't as clear as it should be, or as it could be, right, in your own mind. Ask questions because not every time the instructor is going to be able to realize, oh, they have a furrow in their brow, they don't quite understand something, right, and they're going to explain a little bit better, right? It's up to you to make sure you ask questions, so that we as instructors can convey the information as clearly and as succinctly as we can to you, so that you can best absorb it and call on it later. Number three, set boundaries. Again, right? If you want to just make sure, like, hey, you're the instructor, I'm the student. I don't really want to, converse with you outside of the airplane or outside of a lesson, that's fine. I don't care. With me, at least, please, I don't care. But just set those boundaries. Whatever you feel is necessary and is important, right? Set those boundaries. Or even if maybe the boundaries are like, hey, I need a little bit extra help or something. Maybe so. Whatever the case may be, sure, set those boundaries. But also, lastly, ask for a different instructor if your academic or aviation needs aren't being met, right? If you're with an instructor, sure, and you've given them time, right, to try to show their instructional methods. If it just isn't working, or you don't like them for whatever other reason, or whatever all this case may be, sure, ask for a different instructor. Ryan tries to make accommodations where they can be made. Sure, it may not always work out, but you at least can always ask. Again, always ask. Don't be afraid to ask, because closed mouths don't get fed. We aren't going to know what's in your brain or what's going through your mind, right? Unless you tell us, unless you ask. So if for some reason, right, something isn't working out, please, just don't be afraid to ask. If that case may be like a instructor isn't, again, meeting your needs, or if the instructor, right, sure, you think they're cool, or they're doing a great job, or doing a fine job, but just a little bit clarification or something, right? Just don't be afraid to ask. Okay. And that about does it for my little spiel on professionalism and how we as instructors here at Parks can be more professional. And also how you as a student can even be professional in a way. So thank you all for attending, and I'll see y'all later. Cool.
All right. All right. So thank you guys again, Paul, Earl, Jeremy, and Tom. We thank you for being here on behalf of Parks College and on behalf of the safety committee, and just providing this conversation, this dialogue and discussion as we go through a list of questions here. We just want to start by maybe brief intros from all of y'all. If you don't mind, we'll start with you, Paul, if that's all right.
Sure. My name's Paul Oppel. I'm a controller here at the downtown airport, tower controller here. I've been here for about 3 years. Aviation background prior to this was my college degree at Central Missouri in Warrensburg. Bachelor of Science in Aviation with got through private, commercial, multi-single, and instrument rating as well.
All right, Earl, we'll jump to you next. Thank you, Paul.
My name's Earl Robinson. I've been a controller here for 5 years at St. Louis Downtown Airport. Prior to this, in aviation, I have a bachelor's degree from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach. I have my private, single, multi, and commercial instrument ratings. Besides that, I was in the Army National Guard for 8 years as an infantryman and an engineer officer.
Awesome. Thank you for your service, Earl, too. With that, Jeremy, if you'd like to provide a brief intro.
Yeah, my name is Jeremy Howard. I've been a controller for just over 10 years now. Started at Spirit of St. Louis Airport in 2010. After 2 years, went over to St. Louis Lambert, was there for 3.5, and then 2016, around August, I think it was, I came over to St. Louis Approach, and I've been over here ever since then. Don't have any other actual flying background, no military background. I was a college grad with a computer information systems degree. So if the aviation bug hits you and you like the air traffic world, then feel free to come on board, because you don't need any kind of multi-$100,000 degree to do this. You can come out of high school and still do this.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yep. And Tom, we'll go ahead and wrap it up with you for the intros here.
Okay, similar to Jeremy, I didn't have a lot of aviation background before I started, so I started in 1987, which is a little bit before most of your times, I suppose. But I started St. Louis Tower for 5 years.
St. Louis approach as a radar controller for about 25, 26 years, I guess. And then for the last 3 years, I've been doing support. So basically, I do stuff like this, and I interface between our controllers and users, and try to help keep stuff working, and try to help communicate. So that's what I'm doing now, and that's what I'm here for today. So
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, without further ado, we'll kind of jump right in here and run through these questions.
All right, so I'll get started with the first one. So as air traffic controller, we have a lot of in our a lot of students. So what do you think pilots should do when giving but you guys they believe that it's unsafe?
Was that choppy for anyone else? And Paul, you're still on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It was, but we've got the questions here in front of us. I think you were referring to that first question of what should pilots do when they're given an instruction by ATC they think is unsafe?
Yeah.
I'll start with this one. Just going back to my flight experience, as well as I'm sure you guys feel the same way. We're taught very early on as pilots that you are the pilot in control, and you are solely responsible for the safety of that aircraft and the people on board. So when push comes to shove and the rubber meets the road, you're the pilot in command, and you have to do what is necessary for the safety of your operation. Obviously, there's a symbiotic relationship between pilots and controllers to where, you know, if you feel like you're in an unsafe situation, if there's something that we can do as controllers to help you in that situation, we're absolutely going to do it to the best of our ability. But if it's an instruction from us that conflicts with your operation in a safety aspect, you just have to remember that you guys are the pilot in command.
The word unable is the best word in your vocabulary. If it's something that you can't do, won't do, that you think is unsafe, just say you're unable. As somebody that does not have previous flying experience as a pilot and hasn't been through the student pilot side of it, I can tell you what I think will work from my side of the screen, and I can set it up for how I need things to work on my end. But if it's not going to work for you, not just I don't want to do it, but if it's going to put you in an unsafe situation, please tell me. I am limited in what I know. I can tell you about performance characteristics of airplanes, but if I want you to climb up somewhere that you can't, or if it's a VFR day below 3,000 and I want you to climb up to 35 and there's clouds and you can't do it, please tell me and we'll work something else out.
Yeah.
Say one more thing to add to that is when you say unable, also give a reason. Like I can't make a short approach, I'm not proficient at it. Give us a heads up as to why you can't do what we're asking you to do, so we can either accommodate that in the future, or you can bring awareness to us about a situation that we might not know is developing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome to hear that too from y'all as well. You know, because again, it's hard for us as students, I think, to put a face to who we're talking to sometimes, and that may be a little bit intimidating. I think I can speak for some of us at Parks here and just aviators in general. But I think, you know, providing that context for y'all is of the utmost importance, especially in a situation that may need immediate action. So awesome. Cool. All right, we'll head to the next question here. What are some recommendations on what pilots can do to lessen the workload on controllers and contribute to a safer environment in the airspace?
I've got an approach answer for this, but I don't know how the tower feels about these. On the approach side, if you're coming over to us for flight following, be patient. If you hear us talking, don't just wait for an open spate of air and then just immediately tell us your life story. I would love it if you tell me your call sign and where you are, or call sign and just say with request. Let me get back to you, because When we work, the area that we work on low altitude, which is everything below 5,000 feet all the way around the St. Louis area, 40 miles from the middle of Lambert Airport out is what we have. If you're in that airspace and talk to us, then we have, in general, a north frequency, a southwest, a southeast, and a Scott Air Force Base frequency. And we could be listening to somebody on one of the other frequencies, and you're keying up right in the middle of it. So you've probably heard it when you do radio discipline or radio talk and stuff like that, to listen, wait for an opening, but then don't just immediately let out everything that you want. Wait for me to call you back to get the request in.
Yeah, from a tower perspective, we don't necessarily have the combined frequency complexity that you guys have at approach. From our standpoint here at the tower in the class Delta, it's a small airspace, but you pack enough DA-20s in there and it gets, a little hectic sometimes. From my perspective, having good situational awareness is key here, especially in the immediate area around the airport and in the traffic pattern. If you guys are, say, out in a practice area and you're coming back and you hear 10 of your best friends coming back with you, it really is helpful. We don't rely on you guys to sequence yourselves, obviously, but if you have a general idea of what's going on at the airport and you have that mental picture in your head, first of all, you know what to expect, or at least reasonably expect from us, but also you are a lot more responsive and actively involved in readbacks because you just have an expectation of what's probably coming next. It doesn't mean you assume, because that in itself can get you in some trouble with the expectation bias, but at least having that situational awareness cuts down a lot on reaction times on both ends.
Some easy pointers are when you want to taxi out, if you ask for an intersection departure up front and the initial taxi, that way we don't have to go back and reissue it. If you want something else besides Bravo 6, specify it because we have to coordinate it. So if you want like a Bravo 4 or Bravo 5 off 30, ground control has to coordinate that with local control, so that eats up a little bit more time. When you're inbound, specify whether you're there for either a full stop or pattern work, and that way we can just mark that down and work it in. And if you have, unlike a training level, if you have specific things you want to do the train on, like short approaches or simulated engine outs, the best time to do that is when we're not busy. Because if you're like the only aircraft we have in our airspace, we'll pretty much let you do almost anything as long as it's legal. But the more aircraft we get, the more limited we are because we have to accommodate everyone. And if a request puts other people out, we have to take that into consideration. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Paul, thank you for those specific tips too, Earl. It's awesome, I think, for our environment, definitely, and students requesting certain things as they move throughout their training. Paul, I think one of the biggest things for situational awareness from our perspective too is something we harp on is not necessarily being situationally aware in that moment, but what's to come next. I think, and you mentioned that being prepared of, okay, I expect to get this this clearance because I know there's another diamond ahead of me or something like that, or I expect to maybe hold short or something like that. So I think it's such a awesome thing to prepare for the moment, but also for what's coming next as well.
Yeah, if you can build that mental picture of even just the traffic pattern in your head as you're listening. I grew up at an uncontrolled airport out in Warrensburg when I was going to school. So like you are the controller in a sense. You each are controlling yourself. So that forcing yourself to go into uncontrolled fields can sometimes build that muscle of situational awareness.
Yeah, for sure. I think, Paul, that's really important what you mentioned. Having that, that forward thinking mindset really applies in all, all different phases of life, especially on you got to figure out what you want to do, that approach. So kind of just practicing that when you are VFR, and taking that workload off of you, that benefit for both of us, um, and help us, so,
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so we'll jump to the next question here. Just says, what are the most frequent mistakes made by student pilots in flight school environments that pose a hazard to operations? And I know approach, you're not necessarily, dealing with us all the time, but just from y'all's perspective as well, we would really appreciate that.
I wouldn't categorize this as a mistake, but I think one of the things that we battle with the most with student pilots is just attentiveness. And that's not to say that they're not focused. That's just that they're new to the environment and they have 1,000 things going on that they're trying to process mentally. And one of them is listening to a TC. And sometimes just the brain load shedding puts that in the background. And so, on a normal, not so busy day, that may not be an issue. We just make a second transmission. But when things get busy, being able to hear the first call and read it back, in a timely manner can be, a pretty big, or I guess not replying in a timely manner and us having to repeat ourselves starts to degrade safety a little bit. And I'm sure you can speak to this, Jeremy, from the approach level. As aircraft get faster, that performance gets higher. Obviously, you have less time for stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. If you can keep up with stuff, I understand, just because I worked at Spirit, so I was used to Elite Aviation flying out of there and their flight school, and Air Associates, what it was before, that when you have those certain call signs, we're anticipating if I hear a specific tail number, or in your case, if I hear that your call sign starts with the word Billiken, I generally, I don't want to say I dumb things down, but I kind of simplify things a little bit, because I understand that there's a chance that you may be new at this, and this might start touching on something else that we'll talk about in a little while too. But it's one of those things where I want to help you, so help me help you. If you're paying attention to what's going on, I know you've got 1,000 different things going on in the cockpit. You're learning, you're trying to keep up with us, you're nervous talking to us. That's cool. We'll work with it. Just be prepared if you hear Billiken XX, whatever your number is, listen for it. That's the biggest thing, because that's anytime we miss a call, or if there's a bunch of you out flying around, we can have issues where all of the stuff that we do is kind of on a timely basis. Tower's kind of the same way. I know when you're doing pattern control, it's the same system. If you need somebody to turn base, you need them to turn base now. You don't need to call out, tell them to turn base, and then you wait for another 10 seconds, and then you're like, oh, who was that for? That kind of stuff. That will grate on us just a little bit there. So that's the stuff that we like to look out for.
I got something I want to pull up here, and just to make sure we're still on the question of most frequent mistakes.
Yeah. Yes,
So
sir.
sometimes I get over focused during these things. So in this one, sometimes what student pilots do is they hear what they want to hear. Like, we have an expectation in our head of what we expect to have happen next, which is when I work in the tower, I try to emphasize runway changes, change to runway 12 left, and I emphasize that. In this case, one of the helicopter training students, this is in 2019, was told to hold position when he called up. And in his head, he's like, oh, I'm clear for takeoff during the pattern, clear for the option, because it was really busy. So you might have picked up something from someone else, but that was his expectation. He was told something else. And so when he departed and joined the pattern, it was news to the people in the pattern and to the controller. And then he lands on the runway, and this caused another aircraft that was coming in for runway 12 left to go around, because there's a helicopter there. So when you guys are flying, just make sure that that expectation bias, try to be mindful of the fact that when you listen to something, focus on what is actually being said and not what not what you think should be said. And that's not always easy to do. Everyone is capable of making that mistake. Uh, but it is something that you have to just be aware of. And that's on our job. We always listen for misreadbacks. We expect you guys to make a mistake, not because we think any less of you, but if we have that expectation, we're more likely to catch it. So that's what we have on our end.
Yeah, we appreciate again you sharing that and providing that example. I think to just to hit on two different points, what Jeremy said as well as what you said, Earl. I think listening for our call sign is something. It's like, man, you've got to start at the beginning and start that early on, because really it gets more difficult, and especially if you get in more busy or busier environments, it's of the utmost importance, especially if we've got a lot of aircraft up at the same time. And I think really training yourself or training ourselves as student pilots, it's of the utmost importance to really be aware of, okay, the controller said Billiken, now which Billiken are they talking to? And really being aware of, whatever our call sign is for the day. And then Earl, what you said, about not listening to, what you think was said, but actually listening to what is said. I think sometimes in those instances, people are hesitant, or students are hesitant to even ask questions or just say, hey, is this exactly what you said? Or maybe they forgot, because they're running through a checklist or something. And I think, encouraging from y'all's perspective too, encouraging our students and saying, just ask, it's fine. It's okay if you want to ask again, it's not really that big of a deal. We want to make sure you're doing the right thing too. That's something that we need to work on as student pilots, is just, hey, we're going to come out here and if we have something maybe misunderstood or we got stepped on, let's just ask a question about it and clarify.
That's going to be another, like, the whole listening thing becomes an issue, even all the way through the commercial guys, because I don't know if maybe once you get into a flight deck that's almost completely automated, that your ears just kind of turn off. But there's even the guys that fly the bigs, that you hear the word Southwest, and then one of them automatically assumes it's for him, even though I've got 10 different Southwest jets on frequency. Listening for that number, I don't want to say it never goes away, because I hope that maybe you're the new generation that will fix this, but it is something that is a constant problem that we still deal with, even with the commercial guys. So I don't want you to think that you're going to get written up and you're going to get sent to FSDO and everybody's going to hate you, because that's not how it is.
Yeah, that was an example of a student pilot, and and some of the other examples, we have like actual commercial pilots with like Gulfstreams giving a correct readback and then completely missing a turn, or thinking they have to turn when they're just going straight. It happens a little bit more often, but it's not recorded or focused on in like runway safety presentations, unless it like threatens a runway or something. So these mistakes do happen, and it's human error. But it's not just like a student thing, it's like a career thing where seasoned pilots are still making these mistakes.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all again providing those examples and letting us know we're not alone in that. So we're going to continue working on it and doing our best to emphasize that as we go throughout our training, as well as our careers. Awesome. So any other questions with that? Move on to the next question here. It says suggestions for pilots when feeling intimidated by ATC or specific controllers. So yeah.
For this one, I would say it's kind of almost like anything regarding flight training. It's the more you practice it, right? So the more you train your ears to listening to ATC and interacting with them, the more comfortable you're going to be with it. You don't always have $1 million to go out and fly every day and just do it that way. But one thing that I would suggest is for those who don't know about it, there's the Live ATC website. You can go on and just listen to transmissions for free on the web. And you can pick it for almost any airport in the country has it. We have it here at downtown. Approach, has frequencies captured on it. So just tuning into that on your free time if you want to, and just getting more comfortable listening to, and kind of the expectation dynamic we were talking about. Listen to ATC transmissions and kind of think about what the readback might be, and then listen to the professionals read it back, or whoever's on that frequency at that time.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I remember when I first started training, that's kind of how I got comfortable with ATC, because we were at an uncontrolled airport, so wasn't really getting that back and forth from the tower before getting to approach. So kind of just tuning into ATC frequencies and stuff like that on your own time. Yeah, that's really good advice.
We generally work a set schedule for a full calendar year, barring anything special. So, if you're intimidated by a specific person that you hear every Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock, don't fly at Thursday afternoon at 4 if you can avoid it. But in the same vein, like we all started somewhere, and there are times that we have sounded absolutely stupid on the frequency. And there are a lot of times that you'll hear, like when we switch out controllers, you'll hear a change in the voice, but there will also be times where you might hear a controller say something, and then immediately somebody else's voice keys up and says something completely different for you to do. Those people are in training. The one that's keying up over them is telling what is supposed to be going on or what should be happening. So we all started in the same place, and yeah, there's probably a couple of people that do have a tendency to be, I don't want to say they're gruff, but they might sound gruff on frequency, but they're usually just big dumb teddy bears, and they're just trying to do something in a timely fashion. Like we mentioned before, it's one of those, we have a set pattern of how we move people around, how we get you lined up, especially if multiple approaches are happening on multiple different frequencies at different airports. We have a kind of a timed system on how we figured out in our head, we need to do this transmission now, then this one, then this one. And if you miss yours, now I've got to go back and reset stuff. So you might get a little bit of irritation of the voice in some people, but it's not directed at you necessarily. It's just the situation is what probably caused it. And that's where we go back to, if you're listening, you hear your call sign, you can respond appropriately. I know that you get the checklist, what's my fuel mixture, what's the throttle set, all that stuff is going on at the same time. I try to keep that in mind whenever I'm talking to you on the other end of it, knowing I have an agenda, but so do you. And my goal is to get you on the ground safely, and your goal is to get on the ground safely. So we're going to try to do everything we can to work together to get to that end goal.
Yeah.
I would say don't take things personally. They don't know you as a person. They might sound angry or intimidating. They might have nothing to do with what's going on, even in the air traffic control position. They might have just come upstairs from hearing something that made them angry, and their tone is still reflecting that. At the same time, to tie it back into the safety question asked earlier, you are the pilot in command of that aircraft. If you feel like someone is intimidating you to do something that is unsafe, you need to put your safety and the safety of your aircraft and your passengers first. So don't let someone push you to do something you're not able to do. But also, if someone does sound gruff and they're giving you instructions, try not to think that's against you or reflects on you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome advice, Earl, as well as Jeremy. We've got it doesn't. I can't help but listen to that and then think of, we have a professor here who always says, "Never let anyone kill you." And he's talking from both, the perspective of pilots and captains and FOs, but as well as air traffic control and anyone else who's trying to give you an unsafe maybe instruction. And so, we always think about that. He jokes about it here and there, but it's true. Really, you're the pilot in command of that aircraft, or we are. In certain instances, and we have to act as such. So, awesome.
Yeah, Earl, I think it was a good point that you made to not take it personally. I know for me, being from the Northeast, I had to deal with, Boston Center and Boston Approach, New York. So, you kind of have to learn fast not to take it personally, because at those busier airports, their agenda has a much higher risk, which means there's going to be a more pressing tone to their voice. And, flying at different environments, if you get intimidated, that could cost, that could become unsafe, lead to an unsafe condition. So getting comfortable with ATC and not being intimidated is, yeah, like you said, very important.
Jump to the next one here, Aja.
Yep, gotcha. So how do you manage working under pressure and in situations where the airspace might become congested?
This is really big for the downtown guys, I think, especially when you start to do your pattern work and anything that goes in the airport environment, because whenever you guys are out flying, it gets super busy in that one area when you all want to go out at the same time and you all want to come back at the same time. We generally have less of a it's not a fear, but just less of a chance of having major issues. We've mentioned, and you'll see in all the training stuff going in the North Practice area, where that's where we want to talk to you and where things can get congested, because anytime you do work of flying around the VOR, I know Troy is the closest one, so it's the easiest one to get to and it's quick and all that stuff, but you're also right in the flight path of the arrivals into the Scott Air Force Base. So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking out for, and that's why we want to be able to talk to you. As far as the under pressure part, we have the ability that I think is a little bit better than what the tower might, in the sense that when our frequency starts to get congested, we can actually split it off to where I am only talking to people on one section of the airspace, and then somebody else is talking to the ones on the other parts of the airspace. And we have the ability to bring somebody over to actually listen and watch what's going on, hear us talking, and they can arrange and coordinate stuff with the tower, with Alton Tower, with Scott Air Force Base, to make things work out. So there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that you'll never know about and that you never see or hear, because you might hear a pilot or a controller and there's a long running joke about, oh, I was on the landline, or oh, I was on the line. 20-30% of the time it's a joke and we weren't really, we were just talking to someone and missed what you said. But the other major big portion of that time, we're in the middle of coordinating something. You might be real close to Scott Air Force Base's airspace, and we want to make sure Scott knows that you're there and what you're doing. So we get what we call a point out. We're just saying, hey, watch out, this guy's going to be right on the edge of your airspace or might be just in it. And Alton's real good about those. Scott's really good about those kinds of things. And we're just trying to set it up so that everything that is going on behind the scenes is keeping you safe without you knowing that we're actually doing something about it.
Yeah, we should ask for help, like Jeremy says. We, as controllers, you see it's getting busy, you should ask for help. But we're kind of fighting against also that we enjoy those busy times too, and we want the challenge, but we do need to provide a service, and hopefully you're getting that. And if you guys think we're consistently falling down in the service, you should let us know, and we can talk about contacts later. But I think something like this is a good forum to talk it over. But yeah, as a rule, we can ask for help. We can split positions. I don't know if do you have two locals at downtown? I don't know if you can split locals. You can't really do that, but
No.
you can get an extra set of eyes on your problem, maybe get your supervisor engaged, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So typically on a normal day or a normal hour, we're not terribly busy here. But when we do get our spurts where we have, pattern work on both parallels and, all the Billikens and the ideal planes are out mixed in with IFR arrivals, departures, and the helicopters, it can get very complex in a hurry. And the difference, I think, between us and approach is theirs is more of a structured chaos. Ours is just chaos sometimes, which is fun. It can, like Jeremy said, or Tom said, it can be very fun and challenging in a good way, but you never want to degrade safety. So typically we have 2 controllers up in the tower, somebody working local, which is the tower frequency, and somebody working ground plus clearance and what we call flight data, updating the ATIS and things like that. There are times of the day where we're required to have 3 up there, somebody sitting in the back as controller in charge to just kind of overall monitor the operation. But that doesn't mean that those are the only times we can have people up there. If we're scheduled to have 2 controllers up and it gets, saturated with traffic, we can call up for help and have a 3rd person, just another set of eyes up there, just to increase the safety of the operation for sure.
So are there like always on a daily basis, are there usually people on standby just in case, the sky does clear up and a lot of people start coming into the traffic pattern?
Yeah, it's very rare that we would only have 2 people in the building. If we do, it's usually first thing in the morning or, the last thing of the evening. During the normal, the busiest hours of the day, we're going to have at least 3 people in the building.
If you think about, for air traffic facilities, easy way to think about it is we're like fire stations. You might have a whole house full of firefighters and everybody's sitting around watching TV, and then you get a call and everyone's alert, everybody's on. And that's kind of what we're like as well. We work 8-hour shifts, but we're not in the room all 8 hours of that shift. We're given breaks to get away from it, especially if things get busy or if anything happens. You get out of the environment after you've been in usually an hour to 2 hours. You get a break and somebody else comes in, and then you're hanging out watching TV or working on something else, and then you come back and give them a break or give someone else a break, and you just kind of rotate in and out throughout the day. So we have enough people that are on break that, yeah, I may have only been sitting in there for 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden, hey, we need you back in here right now. All right, that's my job. I'm here to do that. I'm going back in right now. So we're prepared for it.
I'd say as a prep in terms of how I handle stress in general is I make sure I get enough sleep and I make sure I exercise throughout the week, and that helps me stay calm through most situations. But when it's busy up in the tower cab, my stress level is pretty good as long as I always have options and outs. And as those start to become fewer and we get too congested, then I start to feel a little bit more stressed. But the one good thing we have about downtown is when we're busy, it's almost a bunch of people in pattern work. And we always do have an out if we're willing to use it, and that's to get everyone to full stop and then taxi back to the runway. And that'll give us some time, especially if we have a bunch more inbounds coming out or a bunch of outbounds waiting and all the pattern work. It might be advantageous to just have people do a full stop, taxi back to the runway, and bring those aircraft into land while you guys are taxiing back and get all those departures out, and then have everyone go up again. And that clears us up to do more operations. But I would term it more as excitement when we're busy. It's like a good stress. It's like I feel stressed when I have a project due, and that's kind of like bad stress. Oh, I got all this stuff I got to go. But working traffic is a good stress. It gets me excited and pumped. It's like being if you're in sports, it's like the big game day. It's fun to us. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's awesome to hear from y'all, because definitely not something we have really the inside view on, hearing from both the approach side as well as the tower side too. I mean, I can relate to like the sports. I'm sure everyone else too, in some degree, can relate to that enjoyment as well as maintaining that level of safety. So giving us that inside view of again, how you guys operate in terms of support from supervisors or extra controllers, depending on the situation, is very helpful, as well as your mindset going into it as well. So we're not like, oh, it's going to be congested today. They're just going to be mad at us again or something like that. Rather, you guys enjoy that, and you look forward to it to a sense. So awesome. Very, very cool. Okay.
Is that me, Tyler?
I think we're on 7 here.
Yep, that's you.
Yep. Okay, cool. What is the most critical moment you have faced as an air traffic controller? So very broad question, but maybe just one event or something that y'all have faced that you're comfortable talking about.
I can go first because I haven't really been here long enough to have too many critical issues or moments. Knock on wood, my career so far has been pretty boring. The one that stands out, I'd probably been here a year. It was a solid IFR day. There was a Seneca that had come in and had made, I think, 2 approaches on the ILS to 30 left and went miss both times. It was IFR and a pretty stiff crosswind with gusts, so it was just, not great conditions. So he had already gone around a couple times. The last time he decided to stay in the pattern, the visibility was good enough. He could just stay in the pattern, and he came back around. And I think just the mental fatigue of going through that a number of times, he was on the base leg, and like we typically will do here in the tower, with anybody who's coming in with retractable gear, we'll do a gear check with our binoculars. And sure enough, that last time he was coming in gear up. So just reached out and let him know, hey, here's your gear is up. And yeah, he admitted once he was on the ground, he's like, I would have forgot it. I would have landed gear up for sure. So he was just pretty mentally taxed and fatigued, and luckily, obviously ended without incident, but that would probably be the one that comes to mind for me.
Kudos to you on that, Paul. Good work.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't even know you guys did the gear check, especially for our operations. We have the Seminole for what, like a month and a half, so we don't really get that much retractable gear time. So that's pretty cool.
It even extends to Lambert, the commercial guys, even all the biz jets and the commercial guys. It doesn't matter what you're flying. Part of your job as a controller in the tower is your scan. You're looking out the window at everything. If you hear the controller say cleared for takeoff, our ground controller next to us is looking down the runway to make sure, did I forget somebody that's out there? Is there somebody crossing the runway? Is there somebody that isn't clear of it that just landed that you may have missed? We're always looking out for that kind of stuff. So I get that stuff. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, for me, it'd definitely be, handling emergencies, and trying to plan ahead and give the pilot everything he needs. And you got to get help from the guys around you. And, so it becomes a team effort, getting everybody involved to get you what you need, if you're in that situation, those are the main things, the things with inadvertent IFR, stuff like that is, takes a lot of attention and, help to get a guy help to get back to VFR.
I'd say the most non-emergency critical moment I've had was a helicopter at Jet Aviation requesting to go northeast bound when we're on 12s. And him being newer, he mixed up northeast with southwest and went across both the parallels, which created a situation I rapidly had to fix as soon as I realized he was flying in the wrong direction. And I listed as critical because it was very time sensitive. There weren't a lot of options. Sometimes with emergencies, like when we have someone in and then you're worried about the landing gear, it's coordinating, you have some time, or you're just trying to get people out of the way, landing them and making that gap. But when someone does something completely unexpected and now it's created conflict with 2 or 3 more aircraft, that's also challenging because you have very little time to fix a situation that has created itself.
Mm-hmm. I earned the nickname Crash whenever I was working in the towers just from my inherent ability to be a magnet for emergencies that came in. Fortunately, it was just a joke name, and none of them ever actually crashed. And you were talking about the gear up landings. We always called your landing gear the anti-spark device for when you touch down. But we've had all sorts of stuff from broken windscreens all the way. I had a Frontier jet, or actually it was a SkyWest that came in that had no windscreen. It had been broken by a goose that had hit it, and you can't understand a word they're saying because it's just wind rushing through, and they've got the oxygen mask on. And we've had pressurization issues, we've had gear malfunctions. About a week and a half ago, we had threw in all this ice stuff that we've had. Granted, this is February 18th. If anybody is watching this in the far distant future here, we had a big snow. We had a cargo little guy that came in that his windscreen had frozen over and was kind of this will show my age a little bit if you've seen Ace Ventura, the whole roll the window down and looking out the window. That's how he was having to navigate for a little bit. But yeah, it's normal. I don't want to say emergencies are normal, but they happen, and that's what we're here for. Our job is a service, and we are here to take care of you as a pilot. Whatever we can do to help you, that's what we're here to do.
Thank you all for sharing those moments. I know certain situations you have different emotions, or it plays out differently. So I'm glad to hear no one's experienced too many crazy things. But I think Tom hit it on the head there with teamwork, and I think an understanding between y'all as controllers and us as the pilots, really facilitating that end goal of, okay, we need to get on the ground safely. And how do we do that, whether it's an emergency or whether it's a normal operation day? And I think, through situations, of course, you learn from, emergency situations or others being in emergency situations. But yeah, it's of the utmost importance, again, to work as that team dynamic. So,
and I would just add on to that one, whenever you do have a situation of any kind, our general ability, and one of the neat things about our personality as controllers, I haven't found anyone that has actually been certified as a controller that is not this way. We have the plan of how it's going to work, but we also have a plan B, a C, and a D. And we have already in our head calculated what we're going to do when, and not if, but when you do this action, what are we going to do? And that changes the plans up. So we're constantly thinking about that kind of stuff too. So we're in the whole looking out for you, making sure that you can get on the ground safely. We're already evaluating and calculating how to make that work if the first plan doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes the first plan won't work. So that's awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and ask the next question here. How would you handle a situation where an aircraft enters your airspace without clearance and is NORDO or not on comms?
It's a lot easier with ADSB because we know who you are. For the most part, there are some that we don't. There are some people that mess with their ADSB registration and will just either leave it blank or put VFR in there because they don't want to be tracked. But for the most part, on the radar scope, I can move my little mouse over to it and click on it, and it'll show me your call sign. So I can look up registrations. I don't call FSDO. I don't do that. I'm not the air traffic police. That's not my job. My job is safety. I don't, like, if you fly through and I see your call sign on an ADSB tag, I'll reach out and see if you're on the frequency. If you're not, like I know at Spirit when we would do this, people that entered the Delta, a lot of them would fly off of the Creve Coeur Airport westbound and forget where the edge of that Delta airspace is right at the top and fly right through it. Well, we can call St. Louis Approach from there and let them know, hey, look out for this guy if he calls you. Just let him know, he came through the Delta without a clearance. We're not in this to write you up. We're not in this to try to give you, we call it a brasher warning. If you ever hear I have a phone number for you or possible pilot deviation, that is one of our least favorite things to do because it requires paperwork and we don't want to do that. So whatever we can do to avoid that, we will try to do it to the legal extent that we can do it. I hope I didn't talk over the downtown guys on that, because going into the downtown airspace is a smaller airspace than what I'm used to working with. So
Yeah, no,
a
sorry. I actually lost my connection there briefly, but it sounded like you touched on most of the stuff I was going to hit on with the ADSB. We do have specific intruder procedures here, but they're pretty basic. And it's part of an LOA we have with you guys to tag them up as on the radar and see if you guys can reach out to them. But I think I've only seen that happen a couple of times. It's like legitimately we have people that like to skirt the edge of the delta, and sometimes they clip it, and that's not, I wouldn't consider that a true intruder. There have been a couple of times with people wanting to get a quick arch tour in and try and shoot that gap between, the top of our delta and the bottom of the Bravo shelf, and it doesn't actually exist in the way that they think it does. And some people don't even try; they just bust the airspace. But yeah, with ADSB, that's changed quite a bit.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear about kind of how you guys go about, handling those situations. Because I know when I first, in my last training environment, the airspace wasn't so congested with a Bravo and multiple deltas and uncontrolled airspace. So it wasn't really like that situation didn't really come up a lot where like, oh no, like I'm gonna enter the airspace without talking to anyone. So it's really good to hear that, like, if you do like clip the airspace or something, you guys aren't gonna be like, all right, let me call him up. He's in trouble. Especially coming off of like St. Charles with Lambert. I know, like, the airport is right above that Bravo shelf. So I mean, if you're trying to, make a pattern entry, you're more than likely gonna clip it. Like, if that's just how it is. So it's really good to hear that you guys aren't like really strict about that.
The other assumption we might have, depending on how the aircraft comes in, is that they may be an order aircraft that is coming to land. And from our like what I do in those situations is I don't know what that aircraft is going to do. So we get the light gun ready and we clear the airspace in terms of if they're coming from the south, pattern work guys are going to be full stop or outbound to the east or the north. And we give that guy as much room to maneuver inbound and give them the green light to come in and land. It doesn't happen too often here. I think there was one case where we had a Nordo come in and we gave him a green light to land, and it turned out that he managed to get his radios working once he touched down, which is kind of surprising. So he was able to talk to ground control, but he couldn't reach us in the air. And then we just brought everyone back in to resume normal training. But we don't know what a Nordo is going to do. There's no specific taxi directions or instructions that we can give them. We're not sure if they're going to cross a runway when they taxi back or if they're going to have some weird route. So we at least know that they're unknown, and we have a lot to protect at that point. So it disrupts everyone else's training. But it may be an emergency. It may be something they need, but that's the safest way to do it.
Awesome. Thank you again, y'all, for sharing, certain stories as well as advice and, emphasizing how y'all handle those situations. All right, we'll move on to the next one here. All right, getting the last couple. So next question says, who can we call if we have any questions or concerns about a particular incident that occurred on a specific day? I think, Jeremy, you might have touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, we have people that actually can look that up. Tom is one of the ones right there. He can look up this kind of stuff. The easiest thing is to look up the facility phone number in the AFD and give them a call. And typically you'll reach a supervisor desk and you can tell them what you're looking for. They may have to call you back if something's going on or if it's busy and they're watching the air traffic side, because our supervisors are actually in the radar room watching with us. Some of the facilities, like in the tower, the supervisors aren't always up there, so they will often answer the phone. They'll write down the information and then give you a call back on it. But we have the ability to go back about, I think it's, and Tom, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think it's 45 days that we have a history, and we have the recording of all the air traffic communication and the map replay. We can actually go back and watch a live replay of what happened with it.
Yeah, that's right. And I can give you phone numbers now. You can write them down if you want. You guys, I mean, you probably already have them, but if you got a situation where, you get on the ground and you want to talk to our supervisor, in the control room. Okay, so that number is 314-890-1018. So you'll talk to the guy that's in charge right now if you have a question about the operation or whatever. If you want to go further and talk to the air traffic manager, which would probably filter down to me at some point, that's just 314-890-1003. Okay, and you can talk to him. And then downtown, I'm sure you guys got your numbers. And as Jeremy mentioned, the replays and stuff, I'll share with you real quick. I don't have an ability. You want to
Yeah.
give me the ability to share for a second?
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you one thing real quick. So
You should be good.
okay, so this is Jeremy talked about being able to replay. So this is traffic that's going on right now today. And this is called Falcon. So it's a software program. We can just, replay the data, from the radar right into this program. So, and what I'm focused on here is you see Scott Air Force Base, downtown Parks here. Troy is right there. Alton is there. I happened to bring this up. This was about 30 minutes ago. And it was kind of typical. You can see the cluster going on at Troy. Here's a Lambert arrival, a guy who came off Scott that's going to depart, a guy probably practicing here, a guy on the way to Parks, a guy looks like he departed Alton. So, that's the kind of cluster we have around that Troy, pretty frequently. So, but anyway, so that's an example, and I could listen to the frequencies as I want, and I can rewind, I can, stop, I can save it. So if we do bookmark and save something, it's always there. It doesn't go away in 45 days. So, and if I can make little recordings of stuff too. If you want something for training, I can make a recording that has us talking to you guys. If you got a session you'd like to see recorded, I can probably do that. I'd probably have to get some approval to send it over to you, but if it's for training, I'm sure we could do it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And that's the same, like if you need the phone numbers for that, like that 890-1018, if you're talking to St. Louis Approach and we talked about if you are intimidated by a specific controller, you can call and tattle on them and say, hey, I was just flying in Billiken, whatever, and we had kind of a bad experience. We're just trying to figure out, did we do something wrong? Just kind of be upfront with it that you were having issues with somebody, and the supervisor that's there is live in the room. They can actually go over and see who was working, or they can actually talk to them pretty quick and get back to you on something. It may just be something benign, but there may be something that they didn't know about, and that's a good thing to be able to do. We are reachable. That's the benefit of it.
The same thing applies to St. Louis downtown. The only advice I give you in terms of trying to reach us is you're either looking for a supervisor or manager, and the best times to reach them are from 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Thursday. Fridays or anytime later than that, it's kind of a roll of the dice.
Yeah. And our number here, just for the recording, our number here is 618-337-5660.
Yeah, I was just looking on the chart supplement. Okay, yep.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really great insight as well. Again, us having this conversation gives us the ability to for y'all to share that, and I think gives us a good perspective too on, if certain events happen, either for training purposes, whether to go back, like Tom said, and review that. Makes it extremely helpful, as well as, just incidents in general. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tom. That was a great depiction there. Cool. All right, and thank you all for the phone numbers and walking us through that too.
Yeah,
Isaac, you want to jump to the next one here?
you sound good. Do you handle student pilots any differently than pilots who do not identify themselves as student pilots?
Very much so. If somebody comes on as a student pilot and they mention student pilot, they're not generally talking very fast. We might hear somebody say, like if they're doing their first cross country solo, Billiken 28 student pilot VFR and you can tell by the pace of the speech. I generally go by that. Even if you don't identify yourself as a student pilot, I often listen to the tone and the speed and the pitch of your voice. And if it sounds like you might be a little uncertain, then I try to put some training wheels on you and try to be a little bit I don't want to say gentler, because we're doing the same stuff, but I'll typically talk slower. One of the things that we have a tendency to do what's called chunking, where we take bits of information and we put them together so that we can make one transmission. I may tell you, clear through Bravo airspace, climb, maintain VFR 3,500, proceed on course, and then your mind just exploded because you heard cleared, and that was the last thing you heard after your call sign, if you heard your own call sign. So in that instance, my whole thing is I'll say cleared through Bravo airspace, maintain VFR, and then I might just stop right there and let you read it back to me, and then I'll give you a climb to it and proceed on course or whatever. It's easier if we can split things up, just so I don't overwhelm you all at one time. That's the big thing for us.
Are you guys able to remember like the people that do struggle at first when they're first becoming student pilots and kind of see that progression as they advance throughout the year?
Maybe the tower does. We don't.
It's not always easy to pick out the different students, but sometimes there's voices that are a little bit more distinct, or there you have a stronger accent, so you're more able to place that person, and it's actually a joy to watch them as they go from very shaky takeoffs and landings to much more stable, or if they've come from another country and they're having more trouble with English, it clears up over time as they get more practice with it. So that is very enjoyable. I will add that, like, if you say you're a student pilot when you're going up by yourself, I will try to keep you on the larger runway if I can, or away from the other traffic if I can. I'll try to keep things as simple as possible. I'll probably tell you, instead of extending you out for a distance, I'll probably tell you when you can turn. That way you can focus on just flying the airplane or following simple directions, and not like, extend your downwind a mile and a half, and then you're trying to calculate that and then turn your base, and then, or make a short approach. We'll try to keep you away from that. So, and it also allows us to look out for you a little bit more.
We don't generally see or hear the same pilot multiple times like that on our side. That's why I was saying downtown has that a lot more than we do. They can hear the progression. We don't usually talk to you until you're going out to do something more than just your private or something like that, and you're just doing your touch and goes. But once you get to your solos and your cross countries and you're doing everything or doing instrument training, that's when we start hearing you more than anything. And by then you're a little more proficient on it, and we kind of don't take as many baby steps at that point. But we're not afraid to do the baby steps. So I'm not saying don't call us if you can't do it, because we're here for you. That's I get paid to be in that room whether you talk to me or not. So if you talk to me, then it makes my wife feel like I'm justified for being paid to sit there and talk to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of times people tend to have like, oh, I don't need to be walked through type mindset, but it is so appreciative. I think, speaking for myself, coming from the very beginning of my training until now, having those simple directions, or like you said, you usually chunk it up when you get maybe a clearance, but really allowing us to have bits and pieces. And Earl, you touched on it too, just making it so simple really is so helpful. And I think more than we realize as well. Because once we do start getting the actual clearances, then we're like, okay, now we got to really pay attention, and buck up to whatever direction we're given. So
We have had some pilots that we can tell get overwhelmed that have an instructor with them, and if I hear they sound confident, some of like we have controllers that from day 1 or 2 sounded super confident but were doing stupid stuff. If you sound really confident, then I'm going to expect more initially. But if I give you an instruction and then I don't hear something, and then I hear an instructor voice read it back and they read back everything, that's where I'm like, okay, you didn't say student pilot, but I'm gonna slow it down for you and I'm gonna piece it back out for you.
yeah, that's awesome. Super helpful. Really helpful. And two, Earl, I want to touch on something you mentioned as well. With being such a diverse school and such a diverse environment here at Parks, we do appreciate that, coming from so many different backgrounds and cultures, and just people from all over. And so hearing that, you guys enjoy the progress as well as us, or just as much as us, we really, really do appreciate that, and are encouraged by that. I know I can speak for a lot of us here at Parks. So thank you for that. All right. And then we'll move on to last question here. It's a little bit packed, so we wanted to give you guys kind of like a scenario. So if you want me to repeat anything or have questions about maybe what I said, just let me know, and I'll be happy to do so. But yeah, we'll go ahead and give you the situation here. It says, let's say I'm a pilot flying VFR, and the weather starts to deteriorate around me. Visibility is decreasing, and a cloud layer has formed below me. I cannot descend to my destination airport because I am not IFR rated. And to make matters worse, my fuel is running low. What can you do to help? And do you all have any examples of a situation similar to this? I know it's packed, sorry.
I think anybody that's worked as long as I have has definitely seen that. So yeah, it happens. So one thing we have at the approach control, I mean, we can look at current weather for an 80-mile radius. We can look at every observation, every METAR in an 80-mile radius, and so we can look at all that and try to get a feel for where there might be VFR. Look at the forecasts. So I mean, I think we would start with that. With okay, where might we be able to go to get you in some VFR? One thing I would do as a non-pilot would be to get a pilot in the room who speaks pilot, to help you out a little better. So, and that helps too. So, I mean, that would be one big thing, is to keep you calm and let you know, hey, we're looking, we got this. We're going to find some good weather and get you on the ground.
It's awesome.
We also have the ability to contact the other pilots in the area. I mean, assuming it's a regular day of traffic, then we can actually call up some of the other pilots. We have Cape Air and Air Choice One that fly out of St. Louis, and they generally fly well below 10,000 feet. And whenever they're flying around, they're more than happy to help us out in situations. We can ask them, if you're 10 miles away from them, hey, do you see any openings in the clouds where you are? We can kind of use that information and aggregate it and get you to a VFR area, kind of what Tom was saying. Now, if you're out on Christmas Day, when not even the commercial guys are flying, and there's a couple of flights and there's one guy at 37,000 feet, I can't do much for you.
Yeah, we don't run into a lot of these situations here at the tower here locally for obvious reasons. We just control a small bit of airspace, but just speaking as a as someone with flight experience, not speaking as an instructor, obviously, but I'm sure that this is something that you guys would teach as well. If you're flying around VFR, and certainly in this situation where you're not IFR rated, the first thing you need to be thinking is aviate, navigate, communicate, right? That's the priority that we're all taught from day one. So even before you start talking to ATC, or even if you were doing it simultaneously, be thinking, I just came from VFR, right? Where I came from was good, and I got myself into the situation. Where's the nearest known VFR that I can get back to? A lot of times that's right where I came from. Obviously, as a instrument instructor, you would emphasize, orientation, situational awareness, making sure that you're comfortable with your attitude indicator and your altimeter and all that, so that you can make a coordinated turn back to where, if you're truly in the soup and you need to fly without a lot of visual reference. But I just remember from my personal flight training, that was a big emphasis, is if you get yourself into IFR or even marginal VFR to where it's getting dicey, is get back to known VFR.
Yeah, those are great tips, Paul and Jeremy. I think specifically for us, this is a situation we potentially could find ourselves in, but I think, emphasizing exactly what you said, just turning around and coming back where you came from, if it is VFR, is really one of the most important things. And of course, not being afraid to ask for help, I think is another thing too. If you are talking to some sort of controller, I know y'all, are, like you said, if you've said this entire, interview, is like, hey, we're here for the teamwork and to get y'all on the ground. And, any way we can do that, we do appreciate you guys saying that. And I think for us as pilots, really understanding that, hey, you guys are, have a lot more access, or a lot of access to more information or vital information that could get us out of the situation. I think really taking advantage of that is important as well.
Yeah, and I guess the important thing is the transition from trusting your senses to trusting your instruments. Well, your senses go out the window. You gotta use those instruments. So
Yeah, great point, Tom. Yeah, some of the very first beginnings to instrument flying, like Paul said, is aviate, navigate, communicate, and then trust your instruments. If you're caught in a cloud of some sort or some IFR conditions, really have reliance, as long as they're all working properly, have full reliance on them. So awesome. Well, that is all we have for the said questions that we sent y'all. I was going to open it up to whatever y'all have, questions for us, or just things maybe you wanted to kind of make our environment aware of, or just include in this video format. So kind of going to open it up for y'all, and anything you think is applicable or helpful, feel free to share.
These guys might have a little more for you. I'm actually due upstairs to the tower here in a few minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and drop. But thanks, Tyler. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Paul.
Have a good one.
On the screen share real quick. I can do this one.
Yeah, of course. Let me get you here.
Okay, so you see the mouse moving around with it?
Got it.
This is, for the uninitiated, kind of a little bit of drinking from a fire hose as far as what we're looking at approach. Tom had pulled up a map a minute ago that showed a replay, but I kind of wanted to just give you a general look at what we see. This little section right here is the downtown airport. This is the Scott Air Force Base over here. Alton Airport is up here. These dashed lines are the different approaches that go into those satellite airports. These are Scott's finals. On this one, don't confuse Troy. That's not the Troy VOR. This little guy right here is. Any of the work that you're doing around here, if at all possible, we would like to be able to talk to you in that. I know the LOA has stuff about that as well. In the practice area, when you're out here to the south, just be aware that when you're VFR and you're on the Billiken Company frequency, we can't talk to you. And if you're doing Seminole training, or you're doing anything where you're doing engine, simulated engine out, or anything like that, where you're doing multiple altitude changes from 6,000 and below, that there are planes that do fly through there. Those the Cape Airs and the Webers do fly through there in those same altitude ranges. So we're watching for you. We put a little marker on the plane so that we can kind of keep track of what direction you're pointed, but we don't know what you're doing. So if there is a way that you could be on the radio, we would love to have it, but I understand that that's not always possible, especially in the diamonds when you only have a single radio. This is the 30 final at downtown for the ILS. Anything that's in this vicinity, you start to kind of get into the airspace of, or the approach area around Scott Air Force Base. Whenever they do approaches, like the RNAV approaches on 14s at Scott, and part of the LOA also says that you got to be familiar with what runway Scott is operating on. They'll generally cross the Troy VOR around 3,000 feet. And if you're out here doing your little flying around, if you're not talking to us, we can't really tell you about this guy. And they have TCAS, and very likely will start climbing. And if they're within 500 feet, even though it's fully legal at 500 feet, they kind of get the willies in the military, and they won't accept the approaches in that area. So we love it when you're talking to us, especially if you're doing the work up here. Expect to be somewhere in an assigned altitude, VFR altitude, if at all possible. Anywhere from, I think 2,000 is the minimum in this little spot here. But we can go 2,000, 2,500, 3, and 3,500, all the way up really to 4,500 feet in this vicinity. These boxes right here are airspace that does not belong to the low altitude guy above certain altitudes. This is where I'm telling you it's drinking from a fire hose. So if it just goes in one ear and out the other, that's fine. But if you depart downtown and you're in this area, as the low altitude person, this little box, I can only have you at 2,500 feet. So if you want to climb above that, or if you're VFR, and we've had this happen with a lot of the downtown departures, is they're filed to go up to Vandalia, and they go up to 3,500 feet. They'll start climbing immediately off of here, almost like it's a Class Charlie airport, and will think that they're talking to us so they can go ahead and climb to that altitude. Please don't do that. The arrivals into St. Louis descend to 3,500 feet in this block right here. Out here in this block, they can't be lower than 5,000 without letting the low altitude person know about it. So once you're in this vicinity over here, being at 4 to 4,500 feet at the most, you're in a safe zone. Once you get west of the Troy VOR by about 3 miles, now you're in that airspace where we really have to watch out for you if you're going to be above 2,500 feet. So we can work it out, but we just need to know what you're intending to do. And I didn't turn on the highways or rivers because it really clogs up the map to see everything. But you know, Interstate 64 kind of runs right through here. Interstate 70 kind of runs this direction, and 255 to 55 goes right up through there. So originally we used to say if you're west of 255 or north of 70, you're fine if you're looking at highways and doing pilotage kind of stuff. But if you are out flying around, even if you just buy an airplane and want to go flying, please be aware of what's going on in this area if you're not talking to us on air traffic. This is assuming that St. Louis is landing on 30s. This is that northwest flow. This is the final for 30 right and 29 right here. If we're on the other direction, I don't have the map for that one, but if we're on 12s, this little ring right here is now departures airspace, and I can't be above 2,500 feet either. So I have to really watch out for what I'm doing. So that's just an awareness kind of thing. I know your north practice area is kind of right in this area. So having you on frequency in that area is fantastic. So we're happy to have that.
Generally, when we go to those places, we like to do more of approaches there, because usually Troy is the initial approach for a lot of the approaches in that area. So I guess, does that help a little bit that we generally only go to around that area if we're doing approaches? That way we're in contact with you and we're, actually planning to shoot an approach and stuff like that.
if you're planning to shoot them, I mean, we have a lot of people that come up here that we hear that just come up to the VOR. They'll fly around for 20 minutes or so, just kind of circling around in the area out here, and then they just want to go back to the airport and not even do an approach. Um, you kind of have to work out with downtown with the tower if you want to do an opposite direction approach. If downtown is landing on 1-2 right, we as a for instrument training stuff, we can't put you on 30 left without actually getting a full approval, and we're not really doing that kind of stuff. So whenever you come in this way, if you want a 30 left entry or you want to track it in and then talk to the tower and circle or whatever, be broken off, you need to work that out with the tower. We won't set you up for it. Just pre-advisory. Don't expect to get an ILS to 30 left if they're landing 1-2 right.
That's awesome information, Jeremy. Thank you for sharing that and providing the visual too. I mean, it's one thing to be told what to do, but it's another thing to really understand visually and see it. As we're kind of beginning to understand our environment and throughout our training, you get more familiar, like you said, with highways, with positions, pilotage specifically. So, I think that's something that, again, with the LOA, we're working on, trying to be better about talking to you or talking to approach in general. But yeah, definitely something to continue implementing as the weather gets better here and you start ramping up operations. So thanks for sharing that and explaining that. It's really helpful.
And hopefully, as this becomes an anachronism and Zoom is no longer a thing, that the facility tours can resume. And we've hosted Billiken flight students before, and we're happy to have you over here to see what we do and talk to us. I enjoy that kind of stuff because it's fun for you to see what we do and kind of get the big picture out of it. And maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. I hope it helps.
And
Yeah, for sure.
do they have to take us up for a flight if they come over? I mean, is that,
Perfect. We'll do it.
hey, why not? I could piggyback a little bit on what Jeremy said about the opposite direction stuff. So if downtown is advertising, let's say 1-2 right and left is their active runways, we as approach control cannot vector you for a 30 left ILS. We just can't do it. So, but you can still do it, and I think Earl will back this up. You can just tell us, say, we're going to do an ILS on our own, and just, when you're comfortable, you can leave our frequency, go to the tower. So you can still do the ILS, you just can't get vectors from us. And I guess same thing, if they're on 30s and you want the RNAV 12 right, we can't do it, but you can always say, hey, we're going to do this on our own. So that's always an option for you. We'll give you advisories as long as you want. We just can't vector you for it. We can only do opposite direction when there's an emergency or a flight check or weather demands it. So, and then the only other thing I would just share real quick, another little screen share, kind of building on what Jeremy had there. This is that radar map. These black lines that's the radar map he was just showing you, right? And then underneath this is the terminal area chart that you've probably seen that has the class B altitudes and et cetera. So here's downtown, here's Scott, here's Alton, here's Troy. And again, you see those roads that Jeremy mentioned. So this is I-255 right here, and I-70, 55, I-64. And this gives you an idea of, what kind of traffic we work in this area, so, we can have aircraft in here, anything below 4,000 in this area. We'll be talking to anything, 25 to 3,000 in this area. And the thing, our big issue with these guys flying in and out of Scott is when they're landing 14, that's the problem when we're vectoring them and coming in here, and you guys want to go up to Troy. That's when we're having our conflicts. If Scott is on 3-2 left and right, there's really far fewer problems, right? But you got to really be alert when they're on 14. We're going to be vectoring guys, below 3,000, and you see these intersections, Dadney and Hetsu. You see how they're right over Collinsville here. and you can see here's 255, right? So, or I'm sorry, yeah, is this 255 here? So, um, you know, if you're in that area around 255, and if you don't want to talk to us, and as long as you're staying in that area, maybe 2,000 and below, if that's safe for you, and you don't want to talk to us, that's probably a reasonable place to be. But where we don't want you to be is at 2,500 feet, not talking to us in this area. We don't want that at all. When they're on 14, because we're going to be vectoring in that area. So hopefully that explains why we want to talk to you, and if you don't want to talk to us, maybe a safe place to be. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, again, thank you for that. It's extremely helpful. Depiction, of course, visualizing where we're at or where we would operate potentially, and where expectations for us as air traffic control, especially in dealing with that operation in that area. So thanks again for sharing that, Tom. And Jeremy. Thanks, y'all. Awesome. All right. Earl, anything that you'd like to add? No, Paul jumped off, but
The piggyback off the opposite direction stuff, for the most part, we'll try to get you as close as we can, but a lot of that is controlled by our IFR departures and arrivals. You're talking a Gulfstream versus a Diamond or a Citation versus a Diamond. You guys do not go very fast. That's a good 8 or 9 or 10 miles or however far you are. And the time it takes you means that we can't launch someone off of 12 a lot of the time. That's IFR and has an IFR flight plan. So we might have to break you off. The less busy it is, the closer we can get you. If we have no one there, you can expect to break off at the highway. If we do have people in the pattern, you can expect to break off at 2 miles and enter a downwind. And if we're really busy and it sounds like we got a lot of IFRs in and out, I might tell you it might not be a good idea. Or you might break off at 5 miles because we have to put that IFR departure first. It's not that like we don't want you to get your training. It's just that's between our priority of duties. That IFR departure off 12 is on our list higher than the VFR Diamond coming in on the ILS. So we do what we can, but we still have those progressions of priorities. In terms of safety and statistics, I do have maybe like one chart to show you guys just to keep in mind for safety reasons that might be useful later on.
for sure, yeah, we'd appreciate that.
So I lied, it's 2 charts. So, and this is taken back in 2018, 2019, because due to COVID, the number of flights have gone down, which means the number of incidents have gone down. But runway incursions go up. They have been going up for years. Part of that is good because it means more people are reporting it, but part of it is as aviation continues to grow, there are more incidents. But reporting them is important so we can track it and we can see problem areas on the airport. In terms of why our airport is in the general rule high risk airport for these incidents, if you look at this page, you'll notice that general aviation events account for 86 to 84% of all RON surface operations. And we have a lot of GA here. And facilities of level 9 or lower involved are 86 to 89%. And we're a level 5 facility now, and typically we'll probably go back up to level 6, but it's still at a 9 or lower. So we're right in that gap where runway safety is important. Hold short instructions are really important because we have runway 2, 3, and 5, and I try to really emphasize a hold short when I'm giving a hold short instruction. And it's crucial that you guys read that back so we understand that you know to hold short. Because when we have someone landing and departing on 5 or 2, 3, that's a straight shot. There's not a lot of room between. There's no turns. There's not a lot of room between the west ramp and that runway. And we've had incidents where people just start taxiing out and almost cross the runway or have crossed the runway, or they brain fart and just pull onto the runway, or they miss a turn and they think runway 23 is Bravo 1. So I think when I looked at the incidents over the last 7 years, like 2/3 of it was that it's gotten better because the airport's input more security, so we don't have Uber drivers and people on bicycles crossing that runway, which is real events that happened. And that's helped out a lot. But having awareness of those hold shorts and being very safe around those runways and keeping an eye out does a lot to protect yourself. So I would just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's definitely something to keep in mind in our airport environment. Definitely happens more, like you said, with GA aircraft. So
Yeah, and I think the hold short instruction, like you said, is to be emphasized as we have 2, 3, and 5 right there. I mean, we're coming from the west ramp every single time, so really getting in the habit of understanding that is a runway and that requires either some sort of clearance or a hold short instruction. That we can work into our continuation of training and what to expect next. As well as the Uber driver and the bicycle thing, something new to me. I never even imagined that, but I'm sure you guys see some stuff. So
There was one year we had 2 vehicle crossings and at least one person on a bicycle all across 2-3. But you guys are very good at not being involved in any of these runway safety incidents. I think you guys had one incident in the last, I think, 7 years that I was looking at, and that's a pretty good safety rating. And it was just someone who got nervous and jumped the gun. So you guys have a good safety record. I'd say keep it up.
we try.
yeah, always can do better. But thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that, Earl. And the fact is, we never are done operating safely and can always be better and grow and learn. But we do appreciate that number. Something I wasn't aware of either as well. So thanks for sharing that. But yeah, that's pretty much the end to our session here. I know it was a little bit longer than we anticipated, so I appreciate y'all again providing feedback, hanging with us. All of the specifics, I know Paul, please, Earl, I'll shoot him an email, but please extend our gratitude and appreciation for him as well. But we appreciate y'all being here and providing as much of the information that you did, and just at least participating is enough for us. So thank you again, and we'll look forward to getting this out to the community here. So
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity. If you want any of these graphics, I'm sure we can share stuff with you. So if you need that thing from Earl or any of these graphics from